Test 1, 2, 3. Am I hot? Am I hot? Okay, I'm hot. All right, so those of you who know me know I'm a pacer, so I'm not going to get on the podium because I can't stand in one place and talk. The other thing is this presentation is unique to this show. I've not run through it, so I don't actually know what slides are coming next, so I need to watch the screen or I'm going to lose my train of thought. I will also give you my normal caveat, which is after having done market research for 20 some odd years, don't believe everything that you see, right? Because the hard thing about market research is it's very easy to be wrong, it's very hard to be right. So I'm going to tell you what I think about where the industry is globally and how some of the different segments are doing, but I could be very well wrong. So if something doesn't make sense to you, just assume I'm wrong. Okay, so to give you the cliff notes, if there's one thing that you can take away if somebody asks you, so what did I say? Basically, the single most important issue, all others are subsidiary to it now in the global telecom business, is the business models are all changing. I'm going to go through a list of things that people tell me they're really concerned about. And when you get right down to it, they're all about business model, right? So main thing, all the business model drivers are in motion. Now, some of the people that are in this room are from the more sort of competitive side of the business. Some are from the legacy side. And if you were at NextCom, you heard Randall Stevenson at AT&T say, isn't this a great time to be in the telecom business? Isn't it an exciting time? And who wouldn't agree with that? Well, there are lots of us who actually disagree with that statement. There are lots of segments of the business that actually are really feeling like it's a tough time, it's a miserable time, and those things are all happening. So just to make sure we're all on the same page, this is a forecast of global communications revenue, mobile and fixed, stretching out to 2011. And as far as I can tell, I've never found a year since about 1929 that global telecom revenue did not increase, right? So on one level, the business is still a fairly decent business. Now the issue is, of course, with competition, market share shifting around. So the fact that some of us don't feel as good as we used to is because the segments that we're in, frankly, are the ones that are being challenged. Those of you who still feel good, you're probably AT&T, you're probably Verizon, right? But that doesn't distract from the fact that the business as a whole may not be an excellent business. It may not be a 25% annual revenue growth business, but it's still not a bad business, right? So some people accuse me of being very negative. I'm not being negative. I'm simply saying, you know, it's going to keep growing. Always has. I find no evidence that it doesn't grow. It's going to grow single digits, 5 to 8%. A lot of changes coming, but I'm absolutely, totally, 100% confident all the challenges are going to be met. But there are a lot of challenges. Now, these bullet points I derive from talking to everybody. Some of the people I talk to are rural telecom co-ops with a customer density of 1/2 person per square mile, right? Way over on the other end, Orange, BT, AT&T, huge people who are driving maybe 80% of the total global revenue, right? And there's all the rest of us. So this list is just a partial list. It's fairly complete of the issues that executives tell me they're really grappling with. So I'm not going to talk about all of them. I'm going to talk about the one that I think you really need to take away, and that is around 2002, 2003, 2004, think back. You remember where we were. Everyone was panicked. The cable companies are going to clean our clocks. Google hadn't really risen to the top of the jar yet. Most tier 1 global operators had acquired an awful lot of debt. In fact, some of us were wondering, gee, is it possible that a tier 1 carrier could go bankrupt? That's how serious it was, right? Major, major concern. So what this chart shows you, and this is tier 1 carrier C titles, back in those days, the biggest thing people were worried about was revenue growth. Obviously, we got a huge debt load, got to work it down. Overwhelmingly, revenue, and then, yeah, we need to transform our businesses, but CapEx reduction, OpEx reduction, that was what everyone was concerned about. That flipped in 2007. These days, if you talk to most executives in any carrier of any size, what they'll tell you is, we're a little bit worried about whether we're relevant in the world going forward. And that's this dumb pipe argument you hear about. People are terrified that the value of the applications is going to shift to some over-the-top mechanisms, which is explaining the sort of 69% of people who are now C-title, tier 1 carriers, very worried about the business model. Still worried about revenue. Revenue's not important. but there's been a dramatic shift in the thinking. Now, since a lot of the people in this room are related to bandwidth one way or another, as near as I can tell, and these are numbers that Cisco's research department pulled together from looking at everybody's numbers, nothing here should surprise us. Bandwidth growth should continue to grow 50 to 60% a year, every single year, as far as we can tell. And I think there's significant upside because of video. And all of you would agree with that. So in terms of the basic fundamentals, not much change, good healthy growth, at least in bandwidth. Revenue is always the issue for us, but that's fairly stable, something we should normally expect. The big issue, of course, is video bandwidth. If you look at where bandwidth is being consumed, more and more of it is shifting towards video, and not just P2P, but captive video that an over-the-top provider might provide, or Comcast or Verizon or somebody else, right? So really, video is now the story in terms of global bandwidth. By the way, I'm going to take questions at any point. So if you get a question, stick up your hand. Jinsey will bring you a microphone, ask the question. If I don't get to the end of this presentation, it's no big deal. I'm not hung up on finishing the presentation. Srihari's very big on people communicating with each other, so ask away. I don't feel compelled to finish all these slides. Now, the other thing is, if you are somebody who's actually doing bandwidth planning for your organization, how does video affect the bandwidth? Well, it's going to come in a couple different waves. Today, it's really over the top. That's where the real demand is. But what's going to start coming is people like Comcast deciding, we have got to be in the over-the-top video business. We can't leave it for somebody else. We know it's coming. It can't be stopped. We're going to get into it. So you're going to see Tier 1 carriers actually themselves beginning to package and deliver video over the internet, right? So that'll be sort of wave 2 of video growth. First wave is over the top. The second wave is basically cable TV over the internet, and people are going to go there. None of those things are really too scary because there are lots of different ways to deal with that kind of video. You can time shift, you can do store and forward, you can actually use Netflix. I don't see those things being really disruptive. The thing that may be more disruptive is real-time video conferencing, right? Because the reason there is it's got to be real-time by definition. You can't time shift it. Now, the good news is the percentage of total bandwidth that gets consumed by video conferencing won't be anything to worry about. So again, the issue is be reassured. We know where the business is going. We basically know how fast the demand is growing. And basically there are ways for us to get around delivering all that bandwidth. Right? A shocking thing though, I find, is if you look back at the entire internet in the United States about the year 2000, right, when this all began, and you look at the total consumption of bandwidth, YouTube alone today is about that much bandwidth. Well, that's what I mean about video really becoming the big thing, right? All uses of the internet in 2000 are now equal to YouTube. And some of the other numbers, and by the way, you'll have the presentation, so don't worry about taking notes. You'll get all this stuff from Srihari. One of the things that's really interesting is globally, by 2012, 400x bandwidth growth over the year 2000. A huge exponential growth, 2 orders of magnitude. Now, if you're a wireless carrier, you have an issue, right? 4G is coming, and 4G will be very good. But once you start getting people downloading video, and if they're downloading to their mobiles, which is what we want them to do, you're going to have a bandwidth cap problem. If you're a landline operator, again, there are other ways to get around this, but radio resources are very finite. Right? So it's going to be tough. Even if you have a network that actually handles 100 megabits per second, theoretically, to a single user, there's going to be rush hour. Right? So wireless operators are the places that I would look first for real significant changes in the way that we charge for bandwidth.